Today on Eye on Northwest Politics, Oregon now has a new 6th congressional district, and there's a question about if the new district maps heavily favor the Democrats. We speak with the longest-serving lawmaker in Oregon, Democrat and Senate President Peter Courtney, about the new district boundaries and more. Plus, who's running for that new congressional seat? Former Multnomah County Commissioner Loretta Smith is. We talked to her about her campaign and what's becoming a crowded race. And Portland's gun violence hits a record high in 2021. We hear from longtime community leader and violence prevention activist, Pastor Matt Hennessy, in this week's Give Me a Minute. Eye on Northwest Politics starts now. Thanks for joining us. This is Eye on Northwest Politics. I'm Ken Bawdy. Oregon Senate President Peter Courtney is the longest-serving legislator in Oregon history. Courtney began his Oregon political career in 1974 when he was elected to Salem City Council. He was elected to the Oregon House of Representatives in 1981 and to the Senate in 1998. Peter Courtney, a Democrat, has been Senate President since 2003. Senator Peter Courtney, welcome to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thank you, Ken. We go back, so it's always nice to be able to work with you. I haven't worked with you for about 25 years, so thank you for acknowledging me after all this time.
Well, thank you very much for being here. You know, you did some work over this last legislative session. The Oregon legislature approved the new congressional and legislative districts, including the new 6th congressional district, and the maps were drawn and they were approved, signed by the governor. The Republicans accused the Democrats of gerrymandering the maps. Do they have a point, and were the maps actually drawn to Democrat advantage?
Well, I don't know that, except I really wanted the legislation that we drafted, Ken, both the state legislative districts and the congressional, to go to the courts, and they did. Because if we were out of line, you can't gerrymander anymore. You really can't. That's a word that's thrown around. But you can't gerrymander in the state of Oregon, and the courts will throw it out. So all the plans went to some judicial body, and I was very grateful for that. And they came back unanimously saying they were drawn fairly and accurately. So I don't know how else to respond to you. Yeah, I'm a Democrat, and sadly, we couldn't get Republicans to vote for any of the plans. But I do know that they stayed in there and we voted for them. And so I'm sad we couldn't have done it together, but I'm pleased that appeals were made and they sent it to the highest courts in Oregon. And those courts affirmed the lines that were drawn, both in the legislative districts as well as congressional districts.
The December special session approved about $200 million to bail out landlords and tenants affected by the pandemic. Was that enough? And how do we know that money is getting to the people who really need it?
Well, I don't know if it's enough. We don't know if it's enough. We've been messing with this issue for over a year. And just when we're told, well, all we need is this much, we'll be fine. The housing authority is unable to get it done for whatever reasons. It may not be entirely their fault. So I don't know if it's enough. And I do know the landlords are pretty upset because many of them have been holding off for a year or two without any compensation, even though we thought they were getting it. So I think we made a real heavy effort this last special session to really make sure that they will be treated fairly. But I think you will find real complaints on the part of the landlords that they haven't been compensated all these months. And as I say, I'm not going to tell you this is the last time we won't have to deal with this eviction issue.
Did most of that money come from the federal government?
A lot of it, yeah, but not all of it. Yeah. But not all of it.
Now, in that same session, lawmakers also approved $18 million to help resettle Afghan refugees in Oregon. Why are we doing that?
I think it's an emotional thing. It's from the heart thing. I think the feeling is these refugees really have come under a lot of pain and threats and suffering, and that we have an obligation to them because the role they played in Afghanistan for America, for our country. And now they're over here and they should be treated humanely. They don't have anything except themselves and maybe some of the clothes on their bodies. And so I think it was an emotional thing. That surprised me. We did that way, Ken, because At first, it was, we were going to make it, the Democrats talking about it. But lo and behold, I have to give Tim Knopp, the Republican leader, he came up with the offer and we go to 18 million. So that, interestingly enough, was not partisan in any way, shape, or form. Republicans did a lot of heavy lifting there. And I think it's simply because if you have allies that really put their lives in the line to protect you when you're really under fire, and you walk out on them, I think you have a very significant obligation to make sure that you make up for that in some way. So I think that's the reason it's being done, Ken.
Democrats have a big advantage over Republicans in the Oregon legislature. Democrats also have the governor's office, the Secretary of State, and the Attorney General. They're all Democrats. So we've seen some notable pushbacks by Republicans in 2021, including this by Republican Party Chair Senator Dallas Hurd of Roseburg during the last special session. Take a look at this.
You put your mask on just for the sine die.
I do not have a mask.
Could you please leave the floor, please?
No, thank you.
Well, you challenge me because we can go through a whole ritual to expel you, but I've had individuals who work very, very hard, come a long, long way, and I don't want to hold them here any longer. But I must tell you, this is something that makes me sad. Very sad, Dallas.
Now, Senator Courtney, what were you thinking at that time, and what does this say about partisan divisions in Oregon? Maybe also, is it a comment on the urban-rural divide in the state?
You've asked about three questions.
Yes, I have.
How did I feel? I felt heartbroken because we had just done something historic. That last special session, if you see where, I could tell you why, but it would take too long, and you're only giving me about I think a 2-minute interview here. So I'll simply say it was a historic session. I was amazed at how all the bills passed pretty much on a bipartisan vote. It was really something to celebrate from a process standpoint, let alone the bills that we passed and how they benefited the entire state. So I was heartbroken, and I like Dallas Hurd. I just wish I could get to him. I can't. So it broke my heart. And so I felt very sad. The partisan divide, yes, there is a serious urban-rural partisan divide because of what's happened in terms of most of the Democrats come from urban, suburban areas. Most of the Republicans come from rural areas. It wasn't that way when I was first elected in 1981, but it's changed for a lot of reasons. But I do think for that moment, that special session, Ken, what made it so remarkable is that partisan divide didn't exist. Democrat, Republican didn't exist. We never could have done what we did in one day there. And I just wish that I could reach Dallas. I think he's a very good person, wonderful wife, got great 3 boys. I just haven't been able to reach him. And so I was in agony up there. I didn't want to end that session that way. And I don't like to look at that. I've only seen it twice now because clearly I was struggling up there. I didn't want to do things like that to him, but I had to do it. So I don't know what else to say to you.
The next Oregon legislative session is in February. What do you anticipate the priorities will be during that session?
Well, we're talking about that now. Some people have like workforce development. Housing will always be an issue. Farm worker overtime is an issue we need to resolve. It got away from us. There's some pay compensation for workers who are essential workers during these crises. These are all very big issues, and we're not going to be able to do them all. And the thing about February, Ken, is everybody thinks it's a long session. It's 35 days, and it's actually much less than 35 when you look at the internal guidelines. But it's just coming together. We got a huge budget issue. We got a lot of money, and I can see everybody wanting to spend it. So that's perhaps one of the great problems we're going to have. Just talking with the speaker yesterday for an hour and a half, as well as our Ways and Means people. So I think that's pretty much the outline of the big issues you might see.
Senator Courtney, I don't think it's a secret that you're almost 79 years old now. Are you thinking about retiring anytime soon? How much longer do you want to do this?
Well, thank you for reminding me about my age. I really like that, Ken. That really makes me feel like a happy new year. So I'm 78, so that means I'm in my 79th year. That's what you do when you get a lot older. Once you're 78, that's done. You're in your 79th year. I would like to run again. I would like to continue to serve in the legislature forever. Will I miss it when I'm not there? I'll miss it terrible. And I do realize I got a decision to make. And just this interview, you sure enough went there. I knew you were. You're basically, through your question, telling me, Ken, that I should leave. And okay, but I still can make the big play. I just can't make it as often. I liken myself to a workhorse plowing a field. I can still plow that field, but I just can't do it as fast. So, those are sort of athletic references. And that worries me. I don't like that. But, had some real bad medical issues, not complaining, really bad. So I don't know. My wife's not happy with me running again. My sons aren't. They weren't happy I ran this last time, but I sort of snuck by them on it. I'm not going to be able to sneak by them on this. So I don't know what you're going to get from my statement. I don't like to think about it. I don't want to deal with it. But you know what, Peter? You're getting to the point in life where maybe your best game is behind you. I don't know that. I still think I can still do it. The world's changed, and look out, buddy. Look out. The world's changed.
Thank you very much, Oregon Senate President Peter Courtney. Thank you for joining me on Eye on
Is that all?
Politics.
Is that all? Is that all? After all these years we've been,
we have to go to the next interview, Senator.
Well, can you believe that? Wait a minute, Ken. You can't do that to me. I'm going to need.
We don't want to cut you off, but
well,
we
you
will
do.
if we
cut
have
me
to.
off. You want me in counseling? Give me a drive-by psychiatrist. Can you believe?
Senator Peter Courtney, thank you again. Well, still to come, we've talked about the new 6th Congressional District, but who's running for that seat? Up next, we'll talk with one of those candidates, former Multnomah County Commissioner Loretta Smith.